Hi, this is Maria Mandarino here today, and I am going to be interviewing Dr. Mark Brinson, who is a colleague of mine. We met on Facebook, and he has this wonderful product called Evil Bone Water, which I have here, and he's going to be talking about. Um, so I'm going to give my quick description of Mark. So he's a doctor of Chinese medicine. He's the CEO of Evil Bone Water. He also is still seeing patients, I guess, at Saint Acupuncture and Wellness. That's in Georgia. Am
St.
I
Simon's Island, Georgia.
Georgia? Okay. And he's been a trainer in rehab, a massage therapist in rehab, as well as a physical therapist before becoming a doctor of Chinese medicine. He is husband to Sweet Cara, and if you follow Mark on Facebook, you know about that. He's also a father, Army infantry veteran, which he's going to talk about a little bit in the context of his Enneagram type, and a great animal lover with a house full of rescues. Also has a wonderful, wicked sense of humor, an amazing work ethic, great big giving heart, and in his words, functions to succeed to help more people, which is one of my favorite things about you. So, and if you don't follow Mark on or Evil Bone Water on Facebook and Instagram, you certainly should because you have some of the most wonderful, entertaining posts, I think, of anyone that I know. So welcome, Mark. And
Oh, well, thank you. And yeah, I feel bad for a lot of people that just know me personally and see my personal, for instance, Facebook,
mhm,
because what I really try to do is in a lot of the professional groups, post something of extremely high value that people
mhm,
wouldn't know,
mhm.
but then pair it with something extremely idiotic on my personal post so that I
Oh,
kind of play the role of the idiot savant. And so my friends just know me as the idiot instead of the
oh.
savant side. So every once in a while I throw something really high level and then they're like, "Oh, wait, you're kind of smart." And I'm like, I've just been doing it for a long time."
Yeah, yeah. So on that note, tell us what Enneagram type you identify with.
So I took the test and I will say that I did so. This isn't my thing. I normally don't do these. So because I
Mhm.
know you convinced me. And it was fun, but I made sure that I did it extremely quickly.
Yeah,
So I put myself in a mode and I answered every single one uh, without second guessing myself, which I thought was pretty important. And it turns out
mhm.
it was. I turned out to be a level or a number five,
Yeah, yeah.
pretty strongly a number five,
Yeah, which
which
shocked me.
well, and it initially shocked some of my staff, and my staff
Yeah,
isn't just a staff; they're
yeah,
a real team. You know, we have
yeah,
some family members working and things like that, so we know each other fairly well. And
yeah,
they were like, "Oh," but then they read it and they were like, "Oh."
yeah,
So I
yeah.
hide some of it well.
Yeah, and that's the thing with the Enneagram. So it's really hard to type somebody without having either, a really good test and somebody who takes the test properly and doesn't overthink it. But unless we know the motivation and the reasons why, so we can, nine types can do the same exact thing for nine different reasons. So unless we understand the motivation of why we're doing things, so even people on your team who are working with you every day might see you do something, but they might not
Right.
really know why you do something. So I thought you were a seven. I was convinced you were a seven, and I thought, well, if I'm wrong, he's a three. So seven is the adventurer. They love to have fun, and other people like to have them around because they are fun. So you seem to fit that bill on a, superficial observer kind of level, right?
And
Um,
it has been one of the things that since I was extremely five in my 20s, I would make myself do every year. So every year, roughly, I would pick some sort of thing that I wanted to do or try. I
uh-huh.
would go to the bookstore because even if I wanted to start like competitively crocheting, there's a magazine on it, or there used to be, you know what I mean? So I get some tea and a little bit of chocolate, and I look at the competitive crocheting magazines. there was scuba dive. There was a bunch of other
Yeah,
really
yeah.
adventurous things in there. And
Yeah.
so I would make myself do that. And then at the end of a year or two of doing it, I'd decide whether I liked it or I didn't. So there's that part that's in me, but it's
Uh-huh.
not. It was me trying to go out of my comfort zone, and
Yeah.
and it eventually became a part of me. But yes, yes,
Uh-huh.
I get it. So on the surface, I would be a seven because the repetitive nature of me doing that has
Hmm.
led to me doing the exact same things, like in life or in business. Now, if I see something that may or may not work, but my mind feels like it would,
Hmm.
I just go for it. I'm like, the worst that's going to happen, like with competitive crocheting, is like I'm not gonna like it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I waste a little bit of money, not a lot of money, which goes
Uh-huh.
back into the five
Right.
resources
Right.
scarce thing.
Uh-huh.
But we'll figure something out. And normally,
Yeah.
after you do it enough times, you normally come out with something pretty cool. So.
So what about time? Because you mentioned resources. Do you hoard time? Because fives typically do that. So if you're going to learn how to
So
crochet, you're going to resent the time
yeah,
that maybe
yeah. So when I was reading the stuff about a five and resources being scarce and hoarding resources and things like that, and when I looked at especially like the manufacturing part of my business, maybe other parts, uh, I'm a really like do-it-yourself type person, and this did form early
uh-huh.
because I was on my own a lot and in the
Yeah.
country, and so you have to figure out how to make things and do things.
Uh-huh.
But it continued on to where, like with our business, like we do everything in-house. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of businesses that they'll have people put the labels on, or they'll have
Mm-hmm.
people fill the bottles, some other company, or they'll have
Yeah.
people make it and they do that, which are all great businesses. But
Mm-hmm.
for some reason, my innate thing is I want to do all of it in-house.
Mm-hmm.
And if we do it in-house and it turns out just not to make sense because
Mm-hmm.
it's somebody could do it a lot better than us. I still do look at that like
Mm-hmm.
considerably, but it is like from a almost a resource scarce thing. It's like
Mm-hmm.
doing things the way that we do it, the quality that we do it. We're not going to
Mm-hmm.
get that from somebody else.
Yeah.
So is it worth
Yeah.
it?
Yep.
Sometimes that can be to a detriment if you don't
Mm-hmm.
like, if you don't analyze things honestly,
Yep.
do something for a year and then go,
Yeah.
somebody could do this better.
Yeah. Yep. I get that. I get
Yeah.
that. So I lead with five too, and for the longest time I thought I was one because the one's the perfectionist. So
Yeah.
fives can kind of do that, but they do it for that reason of figuring out who's going to use the resources best
Okay.
and how that's
Well,
going to
the
reflect.
one of my favorite quotes has always been the shadow of perfection is procrastination.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something that I have to look at like every day. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I'm
Yep.
so much better at it now, but
Mm-hmm.
um how much more perfect can I make this by delaying?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
So what's
thing.
behind the delay? Is it
Oh.
so let me give some insight into that question. So fives have this thing about, well, they're the experts usually, right?
Mhm.
And to be the expert, you spend a lot of time reading, researching, which you actually did. You spent more time looking up this Enneagram information than I think anybody I've interviewed so far.
Hmm.
So so that's also to your
Okay, well
five.
that's interesting.
Yeah. So it's that idea of I have to be so prepared, and this is more so if the five has a six wing. So on either side of the number, there's another number, right? And we
Right.
lean toward one. So six is also about being prepared. But fives need to be prepared because God forbid someone's going to ask me a question and I don't have the right answer. And there I am on stage. Yeah. So how does that play?
So, for about a decade, I taught internationally. I taught a lot of hands-on work that's
Uh-huh.
a combination of sort of osteopathic and fascial and massage and stuff
Mhm.
like that. But, five different seminars, sometimes five in a row. That was exhausting, but I was all over the world with it.
Mhm.
And every single time I was awake 2 hours before the seminar started studying. And then every single time I finished, I would study for 2 hours after
Wow.
because I was going to be the sharpest tool in that shed.
Hmm.
And you're talking about something that's high level. These are like
Yeah.
3 days on Atlas axis
Mm.
stabilization, or 3 days on visceral manipulation, 3 days
Hmm.
on TMJ and facial pain.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure whether it was a doctor that was there, or a massage
Hmm.
therapist was there, or anybody in between,
Right.
that I wasn't going to not have the answer. And you
Yeah.
would think that that's excessive, but for me, like the repetition of knowledge is exceedingly important.
Yeah.
It takes at least 3 times to actually know something. You
Yeah.
get familiar, you think you know
Right.
it, you don't, then you. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, I 100%. It's funny about these things. When I initially read it, like that I was a five, I was like, oh, that was me in my 20s. And then the more, you talk about it, I'm like, oh yeah, well, okay, that's me.
Yep. It's just, we grow and we evolve and we learn. The more we know our Enneagram, the deeper we can go with that. But yeah, we don't change. Our type is our
Yeah,
type, and then we just grow, ideally, we grow into it. Um, Before we started recording, you mentioned our Army Infantry and the aggressive nature of what
Mhm.
you had to do there, and that being um pretty much against type, right? Like it's not your comfort
Sure.
zone. And you already mentioned comfort zone. So tell me a little bit about how that evolved for you.
Uh, yeah. So not only Army infantry, but special units in Army, you not only be have to be like sort of aggressive on demand, but you have to be
Mm,
hyper aggressive on demand.
mm,
Um, but you also have to function within a set of rules and ethics and things like that
hmm,
too.
hmm,
And so that was interesting too, because I can't remember which part of the body type that it was when we went down to it.
hmm.
But
For five, it's the mind, the head for the
right, the
five.
head,
Hmm.
it
Yeah.
said that your anger is very easily accessible.
Ah, oh,
And so that resonates. So like
oh,
as you mentioned, sweet Kara,
yeah.
I am an extremely nice person, and it would take absolutely the world to upset me,
Hmm.
um, unless you upset my friends. And
Hmm.
so uh, Kara knows to keep me out of certain situations where people might be, um, you know, less than nice or less than friendly, and I might try to kill them. I mean, not literally, but it's so funny. We went to a place one time, and she's another Mark Wrangler. Um, we went to a place and there was this guy, I mean, mostly innocent older guy, that said something to our friend that we go out with all the time that's older than us. She said
Uh-huh.
something to her that she heard and I heard, and I just, my head cocked to the side and she knew. So she took that man and pinched him by the back of his arm. You know, the grandma pinch? She pinched him by the back of his arm and started walking him out of the bar. And about halfway, he stopped and looked back and was like, ow. And she says, you don't understand. My husband is about to hurt you. And she pinched him and she bounced him from the bar. And I mean, obviously with age, I've softened a whole lot.
Uh-huh.
But
But that instinct was
yeah,
there.
the training was very interesting, and I honestly think that it was very important um, to my success in a way, because I'm an
Hmm.
extremely mentally, as far as people go, I'm kind. And some of
Hmm.
the other Ingrams. Not only compassionate, but chameleon, where I want to get along with people. I want to be diplomatic with people.
Hmm.
But that maybe gave me the strength to be even more so,
Mm.
because basically, this is going to sound bad, but a very weak person that is kind is whatever, but a potentially violent person that is always kind is is good. It's showing a lot of restraint. It's showing
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And I don't want you
Mm-hmm.
guys to think that I'm crazy or anything, but it
Mm-hmm.
was also, and you know, there was also a certain part of it that fed into five
Mm-hmm.
because compartmentalizing, you have to
Mm-hmm.
compartmentalize
Yep.
everything. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if you're
Mm-hmm.
going through the worst suffering that you've ever been through,
Mm-hmm.
you compartmentalize it, and then the next time you go through the same thing, you're like, you know, that was not so bad. That's
Right.
whatever.
Right.
There was a recent experience where we were without electricity in an RV at my clinic, which was one of the first freeze days, and we're babies down here.
Oh.
I mean, we can't put up with cold, but it was going to be down to like 32 or something, and so
Uh-huh.
we had to stay overnight for one day in the RV with no
Oh, well,
what do you call it?
no
With no
heat.
heat.
Yeah.
And you know, we had a couple of dogs, and so I was fine. Dog curled up with me, and I like pulled a little. Well, she said that I had a curtain over me to start off with because it was late when we got in. So she put a blanket over me. And I was just fine. She's like, I've never been so cold in my entire life. I'm like, oh, but it helped with the
Yeah.
compartmentalization. It also helped with the fives like desire to really like make things happen at all
Mm-hmm.
costs,
Mm-hmm.
which my complete the mission sometimes is not a good thing. I've
Yeah.
learned over the years, especially with people around me, that sometimes I don't need to complete the mission. I need to
Yeah.
pull up just a little bit for safety of myself or you know
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to bring up the diagram of the Enneagram because what you just shared, um, I think relates to one of your lines. Okay. You can see that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, look at you. You've
So,
got all the nice stuff that you can do. Yes.
so the design of the Enneagram is said to be the Sufi dance.
Okay.
So we have expressions of all nine, but there's one that we're going to step out with. So for you, that would be the five. However, these lines, the line to the eight here is where you go when you want to attain a goal. So if something is speaking to you and there's
Mhm.
somebody in a bar who said something to a woman that they shouldn't have said something to, and you may take care of that, and unless Kara gets in between that, your five is going to start to look like an eight. So an eight is the protector, the challenger, in their lower expression, they can be the destroyer. But for the five, that's not typically where we go. We go to the higher expression of the eight. So the protector, and the challenger, the one that's going to make sure that things are done and the right people are taken care of, particularly if they perceive that person as being weaker than them.
Sure.
Eights really have a penchant for kind of taking care of those people. If they're just kind of weak and whining about it, that's not the kind of weak person that the eight's going to go protect. But somebody who's genuinely at a disadvantage, that eight's going to go right in. So I think that's kind of what's going on there with you.
Oh, that makes 100% sense.
Yeah.
I've told my family knows me pretty well, but I've always told them, you know, the problem that you avoid is the problem that you win. And I've also, you know, your best tool to diffuse anything is your mouth, you know,
Mm-hmm.
verbally.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, they know me to the point that if we're out somewhere, like say that we go to the fair or whatever it is, and I tell them, let's walk over this way instead. They already know that there's going to be something going on over in the other
Yeah.
direction because, you know,
Yep.
after the special
Mm-hmm.
teams, I was in
Yeah.
uh, overseas contracting and stuff. Now, I've done some things that were, you know, that make you very aware of your surroundings and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And that's exactly it. You know,
Yeah. Yep.
I would never, you know, uh, forcibly hurt somebody for no reason. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I would always try to avoid things. And so that actually is pretty cool because that's
Yeah.
exactly it. It
Mm-hmm.
resonates. And
Yeah.
that's where I think that the training and whatnot may have like facilitated that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you know 100% that you're in control of the situation, let's say 99%
Right.
that you're in control of the situation, there is no situation. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yep.
It's
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's the observer of the five. Because
Okay.
five is also called the observer, so the researcher, the observer. So yeah, so being able to assess those situations is a five thing, just have being able to click and find,
Sure.
what's going on, find out what's going on. I'm gonna stop the screen share. I'm gonna come back and forth to this probably a couple of times. So how about all the pets? Because I think you have the coolest household.
Oh my gosh. So I'll tell you something that's really funny. And there's actually three or four things in my life that
Yeah.
are like this.
Mhm.
Before I say the pets, I'll just give you a preview of this one part. Graduating high school, like the year before I graduated,
Uh-huh.
my two biggest fears in life were needles and public speaking. I mean, irrational, sweaty, can't do it, like freak out, anything but needles and public speaking. So I get into my 20s, um, animals and small children used to always love me. Like I would go to some place and they would come up to me and they were all over me. And I did not like animals and small children. I mean, I grew up in the country where dogs tried to eat me regularly because like country dogs are
Yeah,
not always nice and they're
right,
not leashed.
right.
You
Yeah.
know, I can remember having to pass after, had a decent walk from the school bus, a
Mhm.
German Shepherd that was never leashed in his yard that wanted me. He wanted to chew
Oh,
on me. I mean, I've been bitten so many times. I've been
oh
chased
God.
so many times. So I was like, no, these aren't for me. But then things changed, obviously, over the years. I
Yeah.
mean, if you have kids, then you sort of have to like them at least for a little while. But it got me used to it. And my son was like 11, 3 or something.
Uh-huh.
So I didn't have this tiny little baby. I had this
Yeah.
Bubba baby that was,
Uh-huh.
I'm like, okay, well, this
Yeah.
isn't all that bad. And then I induced my daughter a week early because she was looking big and she was 10 and a half, but I was
Wow.
also 10 and a half,
Yeah.
and their,
Yeah.
their mom was 6'1". So
Uh-huh.
it's just no surprise that, Braden
Yeah.
came out six
Yeah.
five.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it turns out that I do really like animals a lot when I got introduced to dogs in sort of a different way. The first was Little Ranger,
Oh
and
yeah.
what we did is we have a really good friend that Kara's known for 30, gosh, she's maybe known her for longer than 30 years. Volunteers as a trainer every Sunday at the Humane Society for 30 years. That's
Wow.
what she does.
Wow.
And so we told her that we were thinking about a puppy. And so we went for like 6 months until, Little Ranger just sits there. And what we liked about him is like when things passed his cage and whatnot, his little puppy would just sit there and
No.
he wasn't like freaked out about anything.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
wasn't angry at anything. He was just like, "Oh,
Yeah.
this is cool."
Yeah.
So, yeah, so he was our first rescue, maybe. She already had a few cats.
Uh-huh.
And then our Maine Coon mix, she stole out of a field. And I
Oh.
say stole because there was this place we used to pass on our bikes in the neighborhood that was like
Yeah.
it was a very overgrown, jungly, like open lot that had never been, it was the woods basically
Yeah.
in the middle of a
Yeah.
neighborhood. There were always cats there and kittens.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
we were just we'd always go by and see the kittens and see if we could touch them. They were always skittish.
Yeah.
But one day she just freaking scooped one up and just brought it over. And she's like, this is it. And she throws it in my hands and the thing's just mauling me and biting me. And then it just looks up at me and goes still. And I'm like, oh, we just got a cat. And she's like, yep, grabs it, sticks it in her basket. Off we go to home.
That was Bruno the Brave. Was that Bruno?
Oh, that's
Or
this
this
is
goes back.
Chloe,
Oh,
the
okay, Chloe.
transgender one. Yeah, Chloe was named Chloe
Yeah.
long before, you got a
You knew
doctor and a
Chloe
nurse
was a
that are sitting
male.
there when it's about to be fixed going, something's not quite right. Something's not quite right here. I think this might not be a girl, but it was too late. So Chloe's
Yep.
stuck. And,
Okay.
after everything's taken.
Yep.
But it's very, very dominant dog cat. And
Yeah.
the last
Yeah.
was I really, really think that our friend BJ set us up because there was a hurricane coming
Yeah. I remember
and
this.
we didn't need any more animals. And she's like, can you please foster like a dog for us? Yeah, because we're trying to put these all in like temporary
Yeah.
fosters because there's not enough room. They got to get out of the vet. They're not old enough to be adopted yet. They're only
Yeah.
like, like 5 weeks old and whatever. And she's like, it's a golden retriever. And we are like, oh, because Kara had one and always
Yeah.
wanted another one.
Yeah.
And so we get there, and it's not a golden retriever, it's two
Two.
golden retrievers, like 5 and 6 weeks old. One's
Yep.
golden, one's
Yep.
red from
Yep.
different like litters, but
Yeah.
the moms were taken in as rescues.
Uh-huh.
So I look and I'm like, absolutely not. And 5 minutes later in the car, I've got one in my lap. It's just it's just all over me.
Yep.
So we thought they were taken. Turned out they weren't. Then we had to choose. And
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah,
so we have a house
that was
full.
hard. Yeah.
And little Bruno the Brave, I was like, we cannot have a freaking another animal in this house. And then stepson Ryan comes in and he's got one in his hands, and I'm like, no. And then I look at her and I can already tell it's already been
Predecided.
predetermined. Yeah, I'm like, okay. And it was one of Chloe, the Maine Coon. It was found in the same little area that it
Oh,
was.
okay.
So they
So
were
they may
very
be,
obviously related, even
yeah.
though Bruno has turned out to be this small little missile. Um, Very interesting cat.
Yeah.
And not Maine Coonish, but he's something. All
Yeah.
of our cats are like 20 plus pounds. He's
Yeah.
like 5.
Oh, he's small.
Oh,
Oh.
he's the only small thing in our house.
Oh,
All of us
wow.
are big. Like when people meet
Oh.
us, they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're a big family." And we're like, "Yeah, we're all pretty. It's a big family." But yeah,
Yeah.
he's just a little tiny weird thing.
And they
But
all get along. That's what blows my mind when you have these videos that they all get along.
well, you talk about personalities and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
And they have Enneagram types, by the way.
Do they really?
They do. Yeah.
I would 100% believe that. When Gunner, the red golden, he's now
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
But when he came in, I called him the cat whisperer because he has this thing about boundaries where he
Yeah.
would come up and like come towards the nose, but
Uh-huh.
not go past it and just be
Okay.
very. So then, you got all these cats and now two dogs. And the thing about cats, though, is that some of them you just don't see. You see them
Yeah.
every once in a while, right? But
Uh-huh.
now that frickin' Gunner the dog whisperer is there, we're seeing them all. They're all hanging out. And I'm like, now we have too many. You know what I
Right.
mean? But he made them all interact better, which
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not just making that up. It
Yeah.
was very, very obvious. He made them
Yeah.
all interact better.
Wow.
So you scatter, they grow up a couple years, and then what ends up happening is it's still the Maine Coon, which is basically like a dog, doesn't want to be on you, but wants to be next to you, wants to
Uh-huh.
have a bite of your food. It's a dog
Right.
cat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have Gunner and Ranger. And then you have ones that flit in and flit out every once in a while
Uh-huh.
for, well, Bruno the Brave for trouble, 100% trouble. He's all about that. But the other ones just kind of float in and float out.
Yeah. What if they, as a five, what do they bring out in you?
That's interesting because, like I said, I was averse to them
Yeah.
for a while. Um, I think they bring out more of my maybe compassion and relaxation, more of stepping out of my head and sort of being myself because the one thing about animals is they're pretty much unconditional and they're pretty
Yeah.
much unwavering in their personality.
Yeah.
They are
Yeah.
exactly what they are.
Yeah.
And like when I ever hear I say people, oh, I don't like cats, I don't trust them. It's not cats. They're all completely different.
Yeah.
So if you
Yeah.
get to know that one's personality, and cats are really good about boundaries too.
Mhm,
They have a
mhm,
set of
mhm. Oh,
boundaries that
yeah.
don't really change that much.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so if you take them for what they are, not for what you expect them to be, you can get a really, really good
Yeah.
relationship out of that.
I'm gonna
So
bring up that screen share again because you just said something that relates. So fives are one of the kind of special types that have this on the Enneagram. Not all of the types have this. So we know you've got that line to the eight. We're going to talk about the line to the seven, right? But what's invisible is this line to the two, which makes another triangle. between 5, 8, and 2. We call
Okay.
it the harmony triad. The only other one that has this would be the 4 up to the 8. So the 2 is the giver. And yeah, I didn't know what you would say when I asked what the animals, bring out in your 5, and you said
Mhm.
compassion. Um, 2s are the type I associate with compassion because they are kind of like that. I'd like to say unconditional giving, but an unhealthy 2, it's not about the unconditional. It's kind of a quid pro quo with the unhealthy 2. But a healthy 2 is really all about compassion. So when you can drive that line that's not there, that invisible line, you see, this is work because
Sure.
the road's not paved,
Makes
right?
sense.
So the animals for you pave that road, which is pretty cool.
Mhm.
So we're kind of deconstructing your 5, which is cool. You're kind of defending your 5 right now. So not that they thought
Well,
you had
no,
to.
and it makes sense
Hmm.
because like we take Gunner to so red golden retrievers are not regular golden retrievers, I've come to find out. They are field goldens. They are very spirited.
Oh
They
yeah.
need exercise. They're
Hmm.
extremely smart, but they're
Yeah.
also dogs, you know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yep.
So if we don't take him to sort of a daycare or a training at least once a week, he's just too wound up.
Yeah.
And so part of like having him in particular, people tease me because I'll bring like cheese when I go to pick him up and stuff like that. And then Braden's like, "Did you bring me afternoon snacks when you came to pick me up?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't." Um, but yeah, I think and it's not that I'm not compassionate to everybody, but I'm also one of those freaking pick your bootstraps up and let's get to work. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
There's
Hmm.
and that's a good and a bad thing about me.
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
not big on complaining. I'm like, I don't mind empathizing with somebody about this and that, but
Hmm.
if I do it more than a few times, do
Hmm.
something about it.
Yeah.
Let's
Yep.
fix this. And it's just my
Yep.
personality. I'm like, let's fix
That's
it.
a time thing.
Um, what's that?
That's honoring your time is what that's about.
Well, yeah. But with animals, if you take them for exactly what they are, because that's what they are, you know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
turns out Gunner is a big, scary guard dog. He's super
Hmm.
compassionate, super nice, but he'll also kind of scare the crap out of you.
Yeah.
It's very easy to be like compassionate within their framework
Right.
because it's kind of a known, which probably
Right.
brings me back to 5 again.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
like knowing the boundaries, I like
Yeah.
knowing the parameters, and when you
Hmm.
do, I think my fear of dogs and whatnot before was because generally speaking, they were a wild card. And when you
Yeah.
go back
Yeah.
prior to internet, we didn't know that they had distinct personalities.
Right.
You
Yeah.
just knew good dog, bad dog. You know what
Right.
I mean? There
Yeah.
wasn't a lot of information. And
Yeah.
now, you see from all the stuff, the amazing stuff on the webs,
Hmm.
that each of them has an extremely distinct personality, and
Yeah.
a lot of it's genetic, which is
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
and sometimes hyper amazing to me when I see, a dog. Well, I think he's maybe the only purebred dog I've had, which is odd for a rescue,
Hmm.
but doing some of the things that just retrievers and hunting dogs do at a
Yeah.
high level. And you're like,
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
what was I bred for? But
Yeah.
yes, the animal thing is cool.
Okay. Okay. So, how has your 5 shaped Evil Bone Water? And then, speak to that because you haven't really talked about Evil Bone Water.
So I used to say when I would frame this in the being a Capricorn type thing,
Hmm.
since I was a late Capricorn, and like I said, I just touch on it briefly,
Yeah.
dabble in it here and there, but I don't get my charts done and all that stuff regularly.
Hmm.
Um, I always thought myself as a very odd Capricorn because while I love to achieve and love to and maybe love to like make money, I don't care about money at all. So
Hmm.
one of the things that you'd find odd about this place or about like my clinic is I haven't handled a bank account in probably 5 to 10 years. I just don't. And a Capricorn normally wouldn't do that.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
I work on
Yeah.
an allowance.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I get a little bit of money per week, enough to do what I want to do, but not
Mm-hmm.
get in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
Yep.
perfectly happy with
Yep.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And if when I had my clinic, I mean, I'm still there, but when I had my clinic, if her or if Sweet Kara said make more money, I'm like, okay, I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
We can make more money.
Uh-huh.
But money is definitely not,
Right.
it's not a motivator. It's
Yeah.
just a metric of success. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
basically it.
Yep.
With Evil Bone Water, I think I mentioned this before when you were surprised that I was a five,
Mm-hmm.
and some of my staff was until we looked at it deeper. Um, I've had to extremely compartmentalize me. So there is me, which upon reflection of what I read, all the stuff, I would say I am definitely a five to the core, right? Okay. But that's me.
Mm-hmm.
So then there's Dr. Mark, and Dr. Mark is not. Dr. Mark is a very certain specific person, which surprises people when they come into the clinic, like that are family members, because I don't and I can't mentally break Dr. Mark. That's who I am that's there. I talk to them different. I am different
Mm-hmm.
with them. I'm
Mm-hmm.
very specific. I'm very whatever. And if they
Mm-hmm.
say anything or laugh at it, I'm like, talk to you later. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
then there's also business Mark.
Uh-huh.
And so, business Mark at the core, there's oftentimes when I'm a five, when I do not want anybody here when I'm doing something. So, when I have to do
Mm-hmm.
something that's big or a big change or a big
Mm-hmm.
equipment type thing, I want to be alone
Yep.
for sometimes up to 12 hours. You know, my
Mm-hmm.
wife knows that it doesn't happen that often, but when it does that, I'm like, look, I'm in a mode. I might not be home for a while. She's like, okay, because she knows I
Mm-hmm.
can't get it done with people here.
Yep.
Although sometimes there's things that are like mundane and monotonous that I need
Mm-hmm.
somebody here. Otherwise, I'm just going to dick around and not do what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
Right. So there's
Yep.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, my family would contend that there's also After Dark Mark, but we're not going to talk about After Dark Mark, which they're just like, oh, just wait till After Dark Mark's around again and ask him. He'll say yes. He's whatever the one is that's like gregarious and just out having a
That's
good
the
time and
seven.
adventurous. And, oh, you
That's
want
the
to do that?
seven.
Oh, let's absolutely do it. I am totally in. Just
We're
make
going
sure
to
there's an
talk about
ambulance
Dr.
standing
Moore.
by. That's After Dark Mark's the one that
We will be
is
talking about him.
100% completely out of number five.
Actually
And
not.
he does
Actually
exist.
not.
I've heard about
Yep.
him. I've even written things down to ask him these questions when he comes up again. So that I can be like, oh, and then at the bottom, make sure that you write it down for daytime Mark. After dark
That's in
Mark.
your Enneagram. Dark Mark is
Is
in the
it?
Enneagram. Yes, it is. But I'll let you answer the evil bone water question first.
Well, and so that's it. So without it doesn't come up when you're growing manufacturing at a small stage.
Hmm.
So when you get over another stage, there is a stage in manufacturing
Hmm.
that anything on the internet will no longer help you. And I know this
Hmm.
sounds weird, but it
Yep.
literally,
Hmm.
there are no answers to be found on the internet.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, well, you're just doing like sort of brewery business, distilling business. Sure. You're just doing shipping. Sure. It's not on the internet.
Yeah.
So what you have to do is because of that drive, because of that, like, I am going to make this happen. I'm going to take this and stick it in a compartment, and until it's done, I'm not going to stop.
Yeah.
It makes you do things that you normally wouldn't. So
Hmm.
that's how it's really helped me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially like sometimes, well, a lot of times in manufacturing, you just have to talk to people. And that's
Hmm.
not what people do anymore. And so that's
Yeah.
not, obviously with a five, that's not comfortable at all.
Yeah.
But I've done it so many like times it becomes comfortable. And
Yeah.
people can't imagine that, but it's striking. So
Hmm.
I'm sitting there, you know, resources are scarce. I want to do everything myself. I don't want to rely on other people, blah, blah, blah. And I'm looking for a caster, a heavy duty wheel that you put under something that rolls, right? How
Hmm.
hard would you think that would be? It's a caster. Come on.
Hmm.
So I'm looking for a week with all these measurements that I'm taking, and I feel like I'm losing my mind because it couldn't take me a week to find six casters, right? Oh,
Mhm.
excuse me, eight casters. It shouldn't take me that.
Mhm.
And when I finally feel like I'm totally losing it, I'm like, I need a guy. So I call the caster guy that there happens to be one in this area. And he says, I've been doing this 30 years, Mark. And I just want to tell you, just one of my catalogs has 45,000 casters. He's like, you are not alone in this. And I'm like, I'll see you in 25 minutes. But that's not five territory. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? That's
Yeah.
complete the mission territory. You know
Right.
what I mean? That's
Yeah.
compartmentalizing territory. That's get
Yeah.
it done territory.
Yeah.
But then you have to step outside of that anxiety and call somebody and be
Yeah.
humble to that person.
Yeah.
And that is super important in business. Like, and
Yeah.
I tell my team this too. I'm like, look, if you call somebody and you have a problem and it's really confusing you, what you need to do is you need to call and be the most humble babe in the woods and just be like, look, I'm stuck.
Mhm.
Because an expert loves to hear people that stuck. I don't know what type that is, but you know what it is. Like they're like, oh, we got somebody that's legitimately stuck. They don't like it, especially an expert doesn't like it when they're like, you need to tell me what I need to do because this is making me upset.
Okay.
You
Okay.
know, it's that push pull. I keep saying the word Engram, and I'll tell you why, because you probably read the Celestine Prophecy.
Oh God, a long
Have you
time
read the
ago.
Celestine
Yeah.
Prophecy
Yeah.
like
A
a
long time
million
ago.
years
Yeah.
ago?
Yeah.
Those are the personality types that really stick in my mind. It's you
Okay.
learn these
Okay.
things in childhood, which are
Uh-huh.
probably, if I went back to it, very similar, but
Yeah.
it's how you got something that you needed from somebody else,
Uh-huh.
and it's a way like the types that you attract. It's probably very
Similar.
similar,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
think about that a lot because
Yeah.
you really do. If you meet somebody where they are from this type of, whether it's
Uh-huh.
a five or whether it's the Ingrams that I
Yeah.
mentioned before, if
Uh-huh.
you meet somebody where they are, they're going to be more than willing to give you all
Yes.
the information in the
Yep.
world or do
Yep.
the things for you.
Yeah.
If you meet them in an opposite one, they're
Right.
not.
Then you get the resistance. Yeah. Yeah. So the Enneagram forms kind of, God, I mean, I read that in the 90s, so it's far away in my mind. But it forms, here's how I view this, because I do charts too, right? So I think charts kind of like the heavenly mandate. We kind of take the tear off sheet. Yeah, okay, the sun is here, the moon is here. Okay, yeah, now. And then the Enneagram begins to form when we look into the eyes of our first caregiver, the very first moment. And in that moment, we figure out how we're going to get our needs met. And
Okay,
that's
yeah,
where the
yeah,
dance begins. For the next 21 years, we're forming it. But that's
yeah.
the first moment of kind of like that tear off sheet chart of like, okay, how are we going to do it? I look in your eyes and this is how we're going to do it.
And that's what
Um,
the Celestine that's what just triggered the Celestine prophecy for me because they called it
yeah.
an engram, but
Uh-huh.
that's what they talk about. They talk
Yeah.
about how you get what you need as a
Yep.
very young baby.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is based on
So
how the people in your life are responding to you and
yes.
what
Yeah.
gets you what you need, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's crying or whether
Yep.
it's, aggression or whether it's whatever.
Yep. And then
Very
it's
interesting.
reciprocal too, because then their
Yeah.
Enneagram is formed already, right? But if they don't know their Enneagram, they don't even understand that we're all in that dance of trying to
Yeah.
get our needs met.
Well, and
So,
that's what I always talk about is like you finally find your partner in life when you start dating the same person in a different
mm-hmm.
skin.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times you're dating, that
Yep.
you learned,
Yep.
and
Mm-hmm.
then you can't step out of it. And then when
Yep.
you look back on it, you're like, oh, yeah, it
Oh,
was the
that's
same
why.
exact person every single time that was playing
Yep.
into this like role.
Yep.
And then when you step out of it, it feels so uncomfortable. Then you're like, oh, wait a second. This is
Mm-hmm.
actually a really cool partnership.
Yes. Yep.
Hmm.
Exactly. Exactly.
Takes a lot of frogs.
Yep.
Kissing a lot of frogs to do that. Hopefully
Yep.
not too many, but I kissed several.
Yep. So childhood, getting your needs met in childhood. So typically fives, um, fives learn that I'm going to call it a payoff, in usually two things: being quiet and a little more withdrawn or reserved, and being really smart or knowing how to get really smart, like where the information is. So was childhood like that? Or
Oh gosh, so childhood, my mom had me when she was very young. She was a single mother much of the time, had a
uh
couple of different stepfathers. Um, and she was also trying to go to school at the time and things like
hmm
that. She was a very intelligent person, like I said, graduated summa cum laude from a couple different things eventually.
hmm
It's very hard being a 20-year-old mother.
hmm
I have over the years learned to give her a ton of leeway because
hmm
and I thought that I was a great kid, but I look back on it and I was like, I was a freaking nightmare, man. Because I was just always exploring. I mean,
mm
continually exploring.
mm
Um, but yeah, and also probably changed schools. By the time I got in high school, I had moved 18 times. So
Wow.
there were sometimes I was in school for, maybe a half a year someplace.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like really smart. So what I would do sometimes when I changed schools, like if I was kind of tired or whatnot, um, instead of them putting me in advanced class, I just need to be in this class. I'm not that smart. And I would just
Mm.
tell them, and they would put me in the not smart class or whatever.
Wow.
Or depending on the environment, I tell them the opposite.
hmm
Yeah, but all those things shaped quite a bit. And
Yeah.
as a Generation X type person, I was alone a lot of time. I
mm
mean, I from kindergarten, there was a key around my neck, so to speak,
hmm
and I would come home and gosh, people would freak out about this. I'd cook myself an egg sandwich on the stove, right? And then I would be out in the woods
Yeah.
until
Yeah.
it was time, until I heard my mom
Yeah.
yelling, bark, bark. And then I would come home. And typically I was in the
Yeah.
woods with a BB gun and a hatchet. This is like from 6 years old because it was semi-rural where I lived.
Yeah. Yeah.
And different from what kids would completely expect today.
Yeah.
So those are probably a lot of things that shape that. I had to
Yeah.
be extremely self-reliant.
Yeah. hmm
But also, I think I don't know, this is probably something that I don't know. I haven't thought about this. But anyway, like the formative things back then are probably a lot different than the formative things today. Because when I think about it, like literally, I had to occupy myself 80% of the
hmm
time.
Yep.
There weren't karate camp unless you were
Yeah.
really like privileged. There weren't karate camps. There
hmm
weren't like toys that you got regularly. There weren't like after school programs,
Right.
there were sticks and rocks out there and an old broken
hmm
down bicycle. And if you
hmm
took the part off this and this, you could make yourself a lacrosse paddle because you saw lacrosse one time on TV. You know what I mean? Like literally, you were so bored, you were
Yeah.
making stuff all the time or
Yeah.
getting into just that's why I think that I was a bad kid. I have to apologize for at some point climbing trees that were like 3 stories high. And they're going, get down here now, but you're bored.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that are so that is a question maybe I have for you. Are we turning out today maybe more of the same, some of the same types instead of the
Yep.
variety of types?
Um, no, I think we still different. I think we still have the same distribution. They say certain countries turn out more of certain types.
Okay.
Nine is supposed to be the most prevalent type on the planet. Nine's the peacemaker.
So there
Um,
is a genetic component to this for
I think
sure.
at least there's some cultural piece to it, I would say.
Okay.
Um, I don't know about genetic, but I'm
Wow.
thinking of my own family. No, we're all pretty different. Um,
Yeah, I've got a son and a daughter that are very different. I mean,
mhm,
they're like me, but they're very different.
yeah,
But then
yeah,
there's some things that are they're just genetically impossible
similar.
to
Yeah,
recreate. But yeah, no,
yeah,
it's interesting because
yeah.
there it is like the average child's upbringing in America today is drastically different.
Different.
It
Yeah.
was, I grew up in the rub some dirt on it, it'll be fine generation. Like,
Hmm
we'll take you to the hospital after 3 days. If it really is broken, like there's no bone sticking out. It doesn't look that broken.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep.
So
But
yeah.
I think five's because a friend of mine, his daughter's like 6 or 7, I think,
Mhm.
and she is that reclusive kid that will go to her room and just leave her alone for an hour with her books or her stuffed animals or whatever it is. She needs her hour.
Mm.
And then she
Yeah.
can, come back into the world. But she needs her decompression time. And that's a five thing is the decompression time. It's partly processing, it's partly being able to, like you kind of said, creating things. But it's
So,
it's
you
processing.
know what's real interesting about that? There's a recharge. You know what I mean? There's a
Yep.
recharge. So
Yep.
sometimes I will stay at the office or warehouse later than I need to.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll take the long way home.
Yep.
I could take an hour to get home
Mm-hmm.
because I say that I'm
Mm-hmm.
running errands or I'm whatever, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
not. I'm
Yep.
or like when Sweet Karen and I first started going out, and she would come up to see me in St. Simon's at the clinic, like on a day that I worked. I had to tell her, I'm like, look, this is going to sound weird, but when I come home, I'm going to get something cold to drink and I'm going to sit down and I'm not going to say anything for an hour. I'm like,
It's totally
you
fine.
you relate to that as well. Yeah, I'm like, I will not say a word. And she just looked at me, which is what makes us a great, makes us a power couple, is that she's like, all right.
Okay.
And then she'd wait till I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay. I call it my
Yeah.
transition time. She's like, have you
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
transitioned? And I'm like,
Yep.
yeah, I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when it was funny too. So, my best friend here, Ty, is 12 years younger than me, right? But
Mm-hmm.
oddly, same birthday and same Chinese sign.
Oh wow.
Because that doesn't
The
happen
same,
except for every
right.
12 years, right?
Right. Yeah.
Uh, but the exact same way, ridiculously. Like,
Wow.
we have a
Wow.
tendency to maybe try to overextend ourselves, but then we pay for it because what we really needed was a half day on the couch or like
Uh-huh.
a day away
Uh-huh.
from anybody. Or,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I used to do that people would think was just odd is I go like watch a movie by myself. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Or
Yep.
just
Yep.
just go somewhere by myself
Mm-hmm.
shopping or whatever it happened to be and
Mm-hmm.
kayaking, but it was
Mm-hmm.
just a recharge.
Yep.
And
Yep.
interestingly, as I've worked myself out or around that, I have noticed that if I do not do that and make myself do that, which is what I tell Ty, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
look, you don't put something in your schedule for that afternoon. Just don't do it. Because
Mm-hmm.
every time that I don't do it and
Mm-hmm.
I lay, because the productivity version of you
Uh-huh.
says don't lay on the couch all
Right.
afternoon,
Right.
like feeding the dog
Yeah.
snacks or whatever,
Yeah.
whatever you guys are doing,
Yep.
whatever you're doing that's an unapproved act, not an unapproved activity, but just totally. But then when you do it, the next day you're like, I'm ready to go. My
Mm-hmm.
social battery is charged back up. My creativity is charged back up. So with business, I think that for, I guess, a five type. I guess I can say that now. Um, that is just amazingly vital. I mean, if I have
Mm-hmm.
a couple days where I'm charged back up, there's
Mm-hmm.
pretty much anything I can accomplish on day three,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
But
Yep.
if I run on fumes for three
Mm-hmm.
days and then I try to do something, I'm going to end up being frustrated because I'm not going to perform the way that I want to perform or I feel like I should perform, even though to other people they may like, oh, what are you talking about? That was great, but I'm sitting
Mm-hmm.
here like, this was, I was on a low battery all day.
What does frustrating look like for you? Like, would someone else know that you're frustrated? Like, what's the process if
Nobody's
you
going to
don't
know if
reach
I'm
out?
frustrated.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
No. The limitations of our meat suit that we wear.
Okay. Okay. Tell
And
me a little
as
more.
you become a doctor of Oriental Medicine, as you know about human performance, as
Yeah.
you're a master herbalist, as you do all of these things,
Yeah.
you know how you can make that meat suit do a whole bunch of things that it shouldn't be able to do.
Uh-huh.
All of a
Yeah.
sudden you're going to be able to do all this extra stuff. Or the next day after
Okay.
something crazy, you're gonna make it happen. Um, but there are limitations to that. And what
Mm-hmm.
normally happens is you get to the end of the compartment, your goals are met, and then you crash. But
Yeah.
the big problem is that I would say for other people like us is that it's not that. That's okay. I
Mm-hmm.
can live with that. That's fine. But if you do it five times in a row,
Yeah. Yeah.
the specter of the burnout is
Hmm.
like right there.
Yep.
And I don't
Yep.
know if it's like different for different types, the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10s. But I'll tell you what, it is not pretty for a five.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've done
Yeah.
it a few times and I've
Yep.
learned a lot of lessons in the times that it's
Hmm.
happened, but it's not a pretty thing,
Yep.
you know?
What fives can do really well, and I don't know that we're the only type that does this, but the unique way we do it, great in a crisis.
Yeah.
Probably the person that's going to be like up front, quietly, just taking
Right.
care of it.
Right.
And you can do that multiple times if you have to. Don't advise it, and you wouldn't either. Um, but they will crash after only because it's okay.
Yeah.
The
Yeah. Yeah.
crisis has to be handled.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's
yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring up that chart again because
Can you give me just one
yeah,
moment? Okay,
absolutely.
just give me one moment. I'll be
Let me
back in two
go ahead
shakes.
and
Two
pause
shakes at
this.
once.
Okay, you got it. Okay, so we're back now. So I was going to bring up that diagram again because um, we were talking about burnout. Well,
Yeah,
I'm calling it burnout, but
sure.
that point where you've overpushed, overperformed, and now you're just kind of tapped out. So
Right.
one of my questions for you, do you just zone out, or does it ever look like you start doing too much, but you're not doing much of anything? Like almost a little ADD?
So, yeah. So I have to kind of distinguish it. There's a type of burnout that comes from when your tank's just too low.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you've done like kind of too much and you know you've done too much
Mm-hmm.
and you're just tired,
Yeah.
right? And if you've done it really, really badly, so say for instance with a clinic, and where it happens with a clinic most often is number of patients every day, number of patients every week, and number of days treating overall.
Mm-hmm.
So when it was my sole occupation,
Mm-hmm.
3.5 days, 50 to 60 patients,
Mm-hmm.
15 tops per day.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that was it. That was
Mm-hmm.
what I could do.
Right.
I could do a lot more. I've treated
Yeah.
up to almost 30 patients a day.
Wow.
But if we're talking about sustainability, that was my
Mm-hmm.
sustainable amount.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
what happens, unfortunately, because I don't like to admit this, but as we age, and it's not just our physical age or mental
Right.
age, it's
Right.
because in some ways I feel like I'm way better than I've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it's age and profession that
Mm-hmm.
changes that.
Yeah.
When you've seen
Mm-hmm.
100,000 patients, when you've seen 150,000 patients, that one annoying when sometimes
Mm-hmm.
just hits you so bad that the rest of your day is like, oh my God, this is
Yep.
horrible. You have empathy burnout, you know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep. Yep.
So I feel like that's something that's very manageable if you listen to it. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah.
Like if you, okay, well, I'm not going to be able to do 3.5 days.
Yeah.
I'll come in for the half day, but I won't see
Right.
patients that day, or
Right.
I'll see a new patient or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is.
Yep.
Instead of 15, 16 a day, I'll back it down to, you know, 14, 13, 12, or I'll get another assistant
Hmm.
because with another assistant, I can see two more people and it won't even feel like any. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
there's the common
Mm-hmm.
sense type of burnout.
Yep. Yep.
But then what you were just speaking to is the kind of burnout that faces me more now.
Mm-hmm.
So since I'm only in clinic every third week, somebody else owns the clinic. I'm an employee and I freaking
Uh-huh.
absolutely love just being an employee there and helping to mentor to,
Yeah.
higher levels, which
Absolutely.
is
Yep.
sees my baby grow.
Yep.
But with running two things, and I don't have any marathon days here unless the inspiration strikes. I'll
Right.
go to the
Yeah.
gym and I'll roll in at like 10, 10:30 and maybe eat something and,
Mm-hmm.
work until 2 or 3 o'clock. But everything gets done.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that second type of burnout starts to happen when all those little pieces and parts that you're doing just become a lot. So what you said, you come in and you're like, I just dicked around for 2 hours and got absolutely nothing done. My brain was in every single direction that it could possibly be, except doing the one task that I need to do that's
Yeah,
only going to take me an hour if I can
yeah,
freaking concentrate on it, and I
yeah,
can't concentrate on it.
yeah. Yep.
Um, I sometimes say that I work in bursts of creativity, so I try to ride the burst like when it happens.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
also, if I've overdone it,
Yeah.
and even in a small way, it could have just been that I went out to dinner last night with some people, or a couple nights, I did this and this that I wouldn't normally do, and I didn't
Hmm.
recharge the five batteries. I'll call them the
Hmm.
five batteries from
Yep.
now on.
Hmm.
That's okay. If I didn't recharge the five batteries, then I'm not that my tool is not that sharp.
Yeah.
Now, when I come in and I am charged up, that's it. I mean, it's
Hmm.
nothing to it. It's
Hmm.
like, 2 hour
Hmm.
task is 30 minutes.
Yep.
But
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. So what that's about, it's actually also probably what drives your what did we call it? The after dark mark. Very similar thing. So the five goes to a seven. So remember we said the five goes to eight in security when it wants to attain something, achieve a goal, right?
Sure.
The five starts to look like an eight. When the five is stressed out or overwhelmed, or doesn't get enough time to decompress, doesn't get the 5 minutes with the drink, um, they start to look like a seven. So seven is the epicure, um, the adventurer, different points of evolution in the Enneagram. They change the names, um, but they like to have fun. Um, Fun is kind of like the whole thing. Let's do the things. Let's plan the trips. Let's do, all the different, if you go on a trip, you have to do all the things on the trip. And they're fun to be around. But when you're in the lower expression of the seven, it's the person that's kind of on the hamster wheel going in two
Sure.
directions sometimes at once. My expression of it the way my five does it is my end table on the side of the couch will have more books stacked up and I'll be reading all of them at once. I always know like I need to take a break when I
Mm,
start to do that.
mm.
So everybody has their own expression of it, but yeah, so the after dark mark that you can ask anything of and he'll probably say yes. Is that when you're at that point of like overload, you might be a little too stressed and you haven't decompressed and then fun becomes
Yeah.
the thing.
Yeah, that can definitely be part of it. When I've got a lot of things, because I'm assuming that fives aren't exceptionally emotionally expressive.
No, no, usually not. Nope.
Um, so, I don't take any medications,
Hmm.
but at the same time, the occasional afternoon whiskey does a lot to calm my
To
anxiety. To
loosen
to
that up.
take,
Hmm.
I think there's a little bit of it that's escapism.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Hmm.
getting out of my own like brain,
Yeah.
getting out of my own
Yep. Yep.
lists and standards that I have for myself that
Yeah.
need to be done. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Listen, when I look at things, I've definitely worked hard most of my life,
Hmm.
and I've definitely worked consistently towards a goal. I always say that with consistent, persistent effort, pretty much everything is possible. It just may take some people longer than
Yep.
others, depending.
Hmm.
But at the same time, while I have absolutely zero complaints, if I look at it from the 9,000 foot
Hmm.
view,
Yep.
um, I can be hard on myself for the things that I don't do or don't accomplish or like whatever. And
Hmm.
so, sometimes After Dark Mark is either escaping or he's putting things in perspective.
Yeah.
It's just like,
Yeah.
I do pretty good. I do pretty all right, even though I'm not doing to the standards that I want to do things.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm. So the
yeah.
escape is part of the seven. It's part of the low seven. So
Is
again,
it?
and yeah, so when we're stressed,
I would buy
that's the
that.
stress line. So we go into the lower expressions of
Hmm.
the seven. And the
Okay.
reason sevens like to have fun is they don't want to do pain. So if something feels uncomfortable, it's let's go have fun. And it's not like as linear as that necessarily, but
Wasn't that one of the from 50 to 100 years ago, one of the base psychological premises that still sort of stands that people are either looking to go away from pain or towards
Or toward it.
pleasure. I mean, and
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
still, I mean,
Yep.
even though it's like way up there, it's
Yep.
still kind of, yeah,
Yep.
we do
Yep. Yep.
until we
So that's
start to
that
bring brain
seven.
into it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I think you're coming up pretty solidly five.
I know, isn't that weird?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Um,
mean, well, and like I said, like it surprised you, it surprised my staff, it surprised me at first, but then when I started to think about it,
yeah.
but you know, and this is something I don't know enough about all this to voice it eloquently, I guess I could say, but it seems to me over the years, having been this my whole life, like I said, my 20s, I was this quintessentially. You know, my son is
hmm
this to an extent quintessentially. Um, I feel like it's some of the things that I've done to very uncomfortably break myself out of that have
hmm
contributed to success.
Yeah.
Because, and that's what I'm trying to do with my son. I'm trying to
hmm
show him that listen, this will get you a long way. Fill that brain with everything that you can possibly fill it with. You know, be
hmm
withdrawn, you know, be shy, be
hmm
whatever. Do those
Yeah.
things. But then figure out who, you know, your particular Dr. Braden is or whoever it
hmm
happens to be, because when you
Yeah.
need to turn it on, you need to turn it on.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I always say to them, I'm like, listen, people really like bees really like honey and they don't like vinegar. So when
hmm
you go into some place where you're just confused and you don't know what's going on, if you're just really nice and fun with them,
hmm
even though that's maybe not exactly who you are,
hmm
they are going to do nice things for you. You are
Yeah.
going to see all of a sudden, and that's it. You know, it's like it goes back to my whole thing with smiles. You know, if somebody doesn't have a smile, share yours with them.
hmm
And it's not in my five,
hmm
but at the same time, it's a really good tool when you step out
Yeah.
here and there. And I kind
Yeah.
of just feel like all of the little different ones are great,
Yeah.
but it's when you figure out how to step out successfully and still maintain
hmm
yourself that's where
Yeah.
a lot of success comes in because it's not like
hmm
you don't have great things to offer as just that one like type, but
Yep.
when you
hmm
yeah.
Well, all nine types together are said to be the expression of divinity.
Okay, right
So
on.
only the divine has all nine. We have all nine, but some are just really hard for us to tap. But for the divine, all nine are equally as easy.
Okay, yeah,
So the
I
more we
get it.
evolve in our Enneagram, the closer to divinity we become. So I do want to mention, and I think I said this at the beginning, I don't usually spend a lot of time on subtypes. And for anybody that does, Beatrice Chestnut, in fact, I have the book here, the
Oh,
complete
that's a big book.
Enneagram. Oh yeah, she is the queen of subtypes in the Enneagram. So I pulled out some stuff from her book on the subtypes because this is why I didn't think you were a five, because you're not until you start talking about things you clearly are. But initially, I just didn't think that. But subtypes influence a lot. So we have three subtypes. We have the self-preservation, which is what I am, and we're more concerned with having basic physical needs in place.
Mhm.
And we're not, I hate to say this, but we're not big on sharing. Um,
Right.
but unless we know we have more than enough. And then there's the social subtype, which is more inclined to connect with others. And that
Okay.
five is going to social five is going to look very different from a self-pres five. And then we have the one-to-one five, which is also called the sexual five. They're better at connecting one-on-one. They can handle that energy easier. So I just want to give you a couple of quick things on, we don't know which one you are. I'm leaning toward five. Um, a social five looks more like a seven. They have that fun, dynamic kind of an energy. Um, they make connections easily. They make connections with people who share the same interests, usually based on something heady, intelligence, information. Um, and what else do we have here? Creates barriers between five and others by being invisibly secretive. So it's kind of more of a lower expression. Time with friends is around sharing ideas. So anything you do in social settings is going to be
Mm,
mentally driven. So that's the social. The one-to-one is more about perfect union. So they're avarice, so fives are prone to like that not having enough.
mm.
Um, for the one-to-one five, it's the search for connection and perfect union. So
Yeah.
their highest ideal is love. Again, the one-to-one is just like one at a time, one
Mm.
person on their radar. Seeking the ultimate mystical union. They're intense, they're romantic, they're emotionally sensitive. Um,
Yeah,
and
that
kind
one's
of
not
nah,
that. So
the
with Kara,
social, yeah,
but with otherwise no.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
So
so the first one is interesting. Talk the very first thing you said about the first type. Tell me
the
that again.
social,
Yeah,
oh, the self-preservation.
self-preservation.
That's the having all your physical stuff like your food, clothing, and shelter in order,
Uh,
um,
uh,
and they're a little
so
more about the castle walls, protecting the castle walls.
so I don't want to negate this conversation with that.
Okay.
So um for me, I'm
Hmm.
no like prepper or something weird like that or
Uh-huh.
anything like
Yeah.
that, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But for me, for my family, for my friends, for my extended family or whatnot, one of the things that allows me to step out and do all the things that I do is I've got that 1,000% covered.
Okay, that makes
And
sense.
and that is that compartment is so sealed
Uh-huh.
that I don't even think about it. It's
Uh-huh.
good. Even my neighbor is very different from me.
Yeah.
Marcy's great. She's in her, I'm not going to say how old Marcy is, but we go out with her regularly.
Yeah.
She's very young at heart.
Okay.
Um, but even she knows, she's like, if she ever has a problem, we've got it.
Yeah.
I've got it. Kara knows if she has a problem, we got it. My kids know
Yeah.
if there's a problem, I got it.
Yeah.
So, and even when I've had times that are where it's been extremely lean, I've always made sure I got it because what
Yeah.
I've learned over the years, if I have that, I don't have to think about it at all. But I would say that that is highly important. It doesn't
You
matter
may be
what
self-pres.
happened
Yeah.
here. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Whatever happened here. We're
Yeah.
good. We're good. We're fine. We're
And
gonna be
that's
fine.
how you do hurricanes, because I've seen you on
Oh,
Facebook and how you do hurricanes, and I'm like, oh my God, like I'd be, yeah, but that's
out there
why,
with that
because you're
stupid dog
already,
that wants to walk in the hurricane. Yeah, yeah. There's no, and you know, unfortunately, it's becoming a little bit rare. Like after the hurricanes, I'm out, you
yeah,
know, fixing people's generators
yeah,
or cutting limbs for them and stuff
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's just like a natural, like, yes,
yeah,
if I'm good, if everything's
right.
good with me,
Then you can
and
help.
that I think
Yeah.
there's a lesson to be learned there with other people too. They're always like about giving back and this, that, and the other. Yes, you do that when you're taken care of. If you don't
Yes.
have all your stuff taken care of, you
Mm-hmm.
can't go out and give in gratitude
Exactly.
because you are like it's a house of cards, you're on a
Yep.
thread. But once you are, I mean, that's why we give so much to relief efforts and stuff like this, which is freaking
Mm-hmm.
great because
Yeah.
we're like able to. We're
Yeah.
super solid.
Yeah.
So, but it's the super solid foundation first. Oh
Yeah.
gosh, I had somebody, this is just a total aside thing, but I'm sitting out there and I'm cutting this tree into pieces and whatnot. And there's somebody that's sort of yelling about, oh my gosh, like the liability of it. And so while they're yelling about the liability of it, I've got it all piled up in a nice little thing like this. And I'm like, oh, sorry, I couldn't hear you because of the whatever. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
different world that we're in.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that resonates with me.
Yeah. That's
That
interesting. Yeah.
that security thing, I don't want you to think that that wasn't part of my
Okay.
Enneagram or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
yeah,
it is. You're
that's
still a
super
five.
important.
It's just it's kind of like the filter on each number. So it's either self-pres, social,
Hmm.
or yeah. So it
Yeah.
actually blows the Enneagram into 27 possible types.
Mm.
There is something the five does. So with every type, the shadow, is that thing like the Enneagram sounds great until we hit that bump in the shadow and we're
Right.
like, oh, I wish I wasn't that, but shoot, I am. So for me, when I get pissed off and someone's not hearing what I know in my head, and they're wasting my time because they're not hearing what I know, I will just pick up and And so, as my first spiritual director said to me, she said, so you pick up your marbles and you go home. And I was horrified because she was right. And that's the day I knew solidly that I was, because I was kind of teetering between I was a five, I was a one, I wasn't sure. And then when she said that, it was so undeniable and I was so embarrassed because I lived my life from that place to that point. Does it resonate?
Yeah. So it's a longer story than this, but gosh, how long has it been now? I don't know, maybe 30 years ago when Sweet Kara and I were both around 30 years old.
Mhm.
We had a nighttime relationship. We were great friends, but we
Mhm.
weren't in necessarily a relationship. We used to see each other on the
Mhm.
weekends and whatnot.
Yeah.
And completely right people, completely wrong time for both of us. It really was. So then when you skip forward 15 years, it was completely, actually, was it 15? That's probably less than that, 10, 12. Completely right people, completely right
Wow.
time. Some people might call it recycling. I don't. But anyway, when we have very open conversations, and when she would talk about somebody that had been in my past, she's like, "Oh, so did you ghost them?" And I'm like, "Oh, what? Oh, I see what you mean." I ghost, and for certain very reasons, and in her case, exceptionally good reasons, many, many good reasons. But yeah, I mean, ghosting is a thing.
Yeah.
So if you're
Yeah.
done, you're done.
Hmm.
Bye.
Hmm.
You don't look back. The person is never part of your life again. Poof, be gone. I take my marbles and I go home.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I have, that is one of the things that actually, when she pointed it out to me, that I've made it a point to be a bigger
Yeah.
person than that in a
Yeah.
lot of cases
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's extremely easy for the type of person that I am to say, okay, well, I have a lot to offer somebody as a friend or
Hmm.
as a business professional relationship or whatever it happens to be.
Hmm.
And if they have breached that trust some way, or for whatever the reason happens to be, even if it's not a
Hmm.
breach of trust, there's a lot of different reasons that may
Hmm.
happen.
Hmm.
Then I don't need it
Yeah.
because I can just erase it
Yeah.
instantly.
Hmm.
Um, but it's not necessarily the bigger thing to do.
Yes.
It's not the better thing to
Hmm.
do because
Yep.
sometimes if you circle around just a little bit, you're like, okay, well, there's still a lot, this has to offer. There
Exactly.
was just a
Yep.
situation.
Right.
Um,
Right. Yeah.
so
Usually
absolutely.
two people are coming from lower type in that moment, usually.
Sure, sure.
So
I get that. This is very, from what you're saying now, I didn't realize this part about it, but it's very yin yang. You know what I
yep.
mean? It's
Yeah.
very,
Very.
you got
Yep.
spleen chi deficiency on the plus side or you got it on the minus side. It's two sides of the same coin.
Yep.
They're both the same bad sides
Yep.
until you're balanced.
Yep.
But yeah, yeah. So the poof thing, I've poofed
Yeah.
many times. Poof, that's it. Never
Yep.
seen again. Well, which is also why she's the one that has my passport and all my extra IDs and stuff like that. And from my prior what do you call it? Special teams and all that stuff, like
Uh-huh.
stuff. She's like, how many IDs and stuff do you have? Do you have extras? And I'm like, no, I don't. So I don't get to hold on to my all that stuff.
Yeah.
I get an
Yep.
allowance. I promise I'm not poofing though. That's old Mark.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And that's the shout. And that's perfect. That's without even knowing the Enneagram, right? You've
Right.
evolved in your Enneagrams. That's pretty cool. Um, how kind of wrapping up here. Um, what would you say is the most important thing in just a short kind of look at, because you've just recently, a couple of days, looked at this. Um, what's the most important thing you've taken from learning that you were a five? Or is there?
So I think the most important thing that I've learned from being a five, but not just learn from being a five, learn from drilling into it with all
Hmm.
the other types and
Hmm.
seeing that it is absolutely me, but also seeing that it's not what I project
Mm.
is I really, really do think that it's learning to be more balanced in that or learning to
Mm.
step out of it
Yeah.
is what succeeds. Because I guarantee you, and again, this is what I tell my son, um, which is hard, especially because some of the things are like social anxiety and all
Mm.
sorts of things that go with it that are very hard to talk or project yourself or to put yourself out there or
Hmm.
to take risks and all these other
Hmm.
things. It's just not part of it.
Mm.
Um, I really do think the things that you do and you make yourself do and you make yourself do with regularity so that they become a positive factor in your life
Mm.
are really important to your success.
Yeah.
I haven't read into it, like I said, only more than a few days, but it seems like all of these things could be, okay unto themselves, but have a severe limitation
Hmm.
as far as progressing yourself forward or your life forward. I feel like it's the things that I've done to make myself
Hmm.
unfive. I'm never not going to be five because
Uh-huh.
like you
Right.
you proved it to me. That's it.
Right.
That's what
Yeah.
I am.
Right.
But to make myself function in these other parts of the wheel
Yeah.
that that are important. And I still have a long way
Yeah.
to go. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
We all do.
I still
Yeah.
do. And it will
Yeah.
evolve. I think it also will evolve as success evolves, as life evolves, as where I am, socially, financially, or within groups and stuff like that. I can see it evolving even more.
Hmm.
Um, I 100% know that I'll never reach the divine, but I can always
But the
try to put
goal
my
is there.
fingers in there just a little bit. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
I'm very surprised. Like I said, a lot of times these things like this freak me out. But I will tell you this, Maria, that there is not a single thing that we've talked about that wasn't spot on or didn't absolutely resonate. I
Mm.
really am impressed with the system.
I'm glad. Thank you. And
Yeah.
it's ancient. So to me that because I've played with Myers-Briggs, I didn't study it, but I've taken that test and learned from it. It helped me. But nothing has helped me like this. And for me, it just comes back to the wisdom of the sacred geometry. It's like some things are undeniable. And
Yeah.
if I find it limiting, it's because I'm not looking at it right, you
Yeah.
know? So,
Yeah, I think so.
yeah, yeah. So, well, thank you so much. Please let people know where they can find you, how they can find Evil Bone Water. Let us know all about
Yeah,
that.
so believe it or not, 7 years ago on the porch, we started this thing. We've never advertised, and now we've made over 350,000 bottles.
Oh,
So if you Google all the evil bone water is us, there's only one, but not necessarily me. It's all the beautiful
right.
people that are putting it out there in the
Hmm.
world.
Yeah.
And if you want some entertainment, the Instagram Evil Bone Water or the Facebook Evil Bone Water are always a place
Yep.
to find it.
Yep.
But I will say this year, we are really, really working hard towards becoming GMP certified, which means we'll be able to be good manufacturing processes, be able to be
Hmm.
carried absolutely anywhere. We're still going to stay true to our acupuncture physicians.
Hmm.
Um, so you'll see a lot of stuff coming up that's really, really good, like homework type information on the Evil
Okay.
Bone Water YouTube channel.
Oh,
So
cool.
I want to take all my years and decades of teaching and experience and stuff like that and just give it out as freely as possible.
Yeah.
So anything that you see pop up on the YouTube channel is going to be for just stuff that you wouldn't have normally learned. Really concise things on the wrist, things on the hand, things on the
Hmm.
knee, and
Hmm.
just I feel exceedingly blessed to be a team with all of you guys and
Yeah.
promoting this brand
Yeah.
and making TCM. I want to make TCM in everybody's freaking medicine cabinet. That's
Yeah.
that's what I'm
Yep.
after.
Yep.
So
Yep. And it's a fantastic product. We use it in the clinic. And my story with my dog. My dog has these skin growths that from an
Yeah.
allergic thing that happened to her, and now she has a chronic condition, and we've been able to avoid surgeries because of your bone water and
Awesome.
just working that on those areas, and they fall off. It's
And
amazing.
that's why we grow. It's like
Yeah.
the more help that we can people, or excuse me, the more people that we can help, but also helping you guys. I really, for acupuncture physicians, I want to see you guys making money, helping more
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
It's just, it's interesting with the five type or whatever. There came a point where it was absolutely no longer about sort of success or making money or anything like that. It was just about
Hmm.
helping more people.
Hmm.
And you know what happened? That made more success and made more
Absolutely.
growth and made more.
Absolutely.
So
Yep.
we keep
Yep.
hanging on. And now
Hmm.
I'm trying to just have as much fun as possible as I can with it.
Yeah.
And my only key to that is to not get behind because I guess with
Hmm.
a five type, if you get behind, then
Yeah.
you're not, and so as long as we don't get
Hmm.
behind, this is
Yep.
actually a lot of
Yep.
fun. So
Cool. Very cool.
I thank you very,
Yeah.
very much for introducing me to this. This was pretty cool.
Thank you, Mark. This has really been nice. I appreciate your time. Thank you for being here. And
Absolutely.
everyone listening, I will have all the information in the show notes for Mark and for Evil Bone Water. And again, Mark, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'll see you guys next
Excellent.
time.